everyone. Hello.
Hello.
This is Tom Albrighton, who is, well, I'll let you explain yourself, but I've known Tom sort of from a distance for a while as a copywriter who lives in the same town as me, and we both have a background in copywriting, and I quite often look to see what Tom was up to kind of get a gauge on, best practice and that kind of thing. And in recent years, that's shifted towards lots of discussions around AI, I guess. But yeah, Tom, do you want to just introduce your sort of background and your background as a copywriter and where it's taken you?
Yeah, sure. I originally worked in non-fiction publishing here in Norwich. I did that for a few years. Then I worked in a small design agency, and I went freelance about 20 years ago, maybe a few more years actually now, maybe a few more than 20, when I got made redundant. And I just kind of drifted into copywriting, really. I never had a great ambition to be a copywriter. I just had some editorial skills that I thought I'd try and take to the market. And then after a while, I realized that people who were looking for that always, would always call it copywriting, even if what they really needed was a writer or an editor or, anything else. So I started calling myself a copywriter, and it all grew from then, really. And because I used to work non-fiction, I've kind of gravitated towards the more B2B, factual, long-form type of copywriting. So not the generally not the sort of shorter, highly creative B2C stuff, but the more long and boring type of stuff. And that's also led me to do some academic editing, which has grown to be actually most of my work now. So I do still do copywriting, but mostly an editor these days.
Yeah, I like that drifting into copywriting. I think a lot of us did that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure any of us grew up thinking, I want to be a copywriter. Like, you want to be a writer of some sort, maybe. And then, you discover that copywriting is a thing that exists, and that's what you end up doing. Except, of course, that a few years back, all of a sudden, it looked like it might not be a thing anymore when ChatGPT and that lot appeared on the scene.
That's right.
I think from my point of view, like, my first encounter with generative AI was Midjourney. And there was a time in 2022 where I was really excited about it because I was like, I can illustrate every chapter of my book, like week by week, with a custom illustration. This is very exciting. I got very carried away. Then ChatGPT came out, and I was like, well, wait a minute, you're not allowed to do that because that's writing, and that's what I do. At which point I was like, I'm being slightly hypocritical here, which is when I stopped using any of those systems. But I'm curious, like from your perspective, when you built up a career based around, writing and doing a lot of business writing, what 2022 was like when these systems first emerged, and what were your initial impressions and where you thought it might end up going?
Yeah, well, it's funny, isn't it? When you first use ChatGPT, it is kind of like magic, because it's doing this task that has taken you hours and hours as a human writer to do. It's just producing text instantly on the fly. And when you first see that happen, it's kind of awe-inspiring. And then when you look into it a little bit more, you realize that maybe that text isn't all it's cracked up to be. And then when you get into it a bit more deeply, like when I started thinking about it a bit more and doing a bit of research, well, first I realized where that text is actually coming from. So the fact that it's based on the work of human writers. I'm sure everyone on the stream knows that it was trained on human writers without their knowledge or permission. So that's quite dodgy ethically. And also you don't really know who they are. So, if ChatGPT is giving you a vivid metaphor or a nice bit of description or a character, or, whatever it is, it could be coming direct from another writer. And you just don't know. So I guess initially, to sum that up, initially it looks amazing. And then after a while, the shine comes off. And for me, I realized that it was something that I didn't really want to use. And I sort of became a bit of an anti-AI evangelist, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting, that kind of curve of being like really impressed
Mhm.
but for quite a brief amount of time. Like that's kind of where I went with AI generally, because having grown up with computers in like the 80s and the 90s, the fact that a computer can now talk in a fairly convincing way, it can just produce, surface level convincing text, it can produce
Mhm.
images, like all that stuff is incredible. Like it feels like something that shouldn't be possible technically, and
Mhm.
the leap from not being able to do it to all of a sudden this stuff is here was
Yeah.
quite startling. But as you say, once you get over the initial kind of showbiz element of it, I suppose,
Mhm.
the kind of the sparkle of it all, then that particularly if you're experienced and an expert in a field, like whatever that field happens to be, whether it's copywriting in your case, but whatever your field is, the more you know about the area, the quicker you start to notice all the kind of slight weird gaps or factual errors that are creeping in and that kind of thing. I think I saw someone say that if you're doing research in ChatGPT, it's really good for stuff that you don't know anything about. But if you try and research something you do know about, it always gets it wrong. I
Yeah.
thought that was nice, quite a
Yeah.
nice little description of it.
Well, of course, it's making mistakes all the time. It's just a question of whether you notice them. And if
Yeah.
you don't know the area very well, you're probably not going to you're not probably not going to pick up small errors. So if it says something that's obviously absurd, then you think, well, that's clearly wrong. I'll need to check that. I'll need to correct it. But if you're not an expert in that area, you probably won't pick up something like a spelling mistake in someone's surname, a date that's out by a couple of years, historical date that's out, something like that. And that's where it's really dangerous because it never says, I'm not sure about this, or, there's a blanket instruction to check important info, whatever important means. I mean, all info is important to somebody. So really, you have to check everything. And it will never say anything like, I'm not really sure about this or anything. It'll just present these things as fact, and it's up to you to check them. So,
Mm.
are you really saving that much time on your research? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and you get some people like that, don't you? People who are very good at being incredibly confident about stuff, whether they actually know what they're talking about or not. But most people, their confidence level sort of matches their experience and knowledge or what have you. So, if you ask someone about something they don't know anything about, they will usually be like, "Oh, I don't know," or they'll say,
Mhm.
"Oh, I think it might be this, but I'm not sure." So you get that kind of scale, I suppose. Whereas AI tends to come in with like 100% confidence all the
Yeah,
time, to what, which actually then sort of undermines the whole thing, because then even the stuff that it is getting right, it's hard to have faith in that case. And as you say, if you're particularly trying to use it professionally, then all of a sudden the apparent time-saving gains that you get completely undermined because every single thing has to be checked.
yeah, yeah. Well, whenever we get a message, we're not just looking at the message; we're looking at the messenger as well. So that's how you know whether to, how much trust to put in what somebody says, or how much to take it into account. Is not only what is this person saying, but who are they and where's it coming from. And if it's a relationship of trust, then you know that they don't know everything about everything, but maybe you still value their opinion. And it's the same if you just go online using old-fashioned Google, where you actually click through to the website. You might arrive at a blog post or something about what you want to find out about, and you just form a judgment of who is this person? Do I trust their voice? Is their voice internally consistent? Do I like the way they speak? Do I like the attitudes that I can detect in what they say? And that helps you decide whether you're going to trust what they say.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as soon as AI is being the mediator between you and whoever you're really reading, you just lose all that completely. And this happens even on something as trivial as product reviews on Amazon. So Amazon started putting in an AI overview of what reviewers say. Um, but if you're buying something, say it's something for the house or the garden, and somebody's written a review of it, you want to know who they are. Is that someone like you? Is that someone who's faced the same problem as you, or has the same buying mission as you, or whatever you want to call it? You want to have a sense that you know them and trust them. And if it's just AI summarizing everything, that isn't just neutral facts coming through. It's somebody's opinion, and you need a sense of who's talking and whether you trust them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's that assumption that just by having lots of data, you're getting towards some kind of truth. Whereas you're probably getting towards something that sounds fairly truthful, but is lacking all sorts of context. In terms of like your work and doing copywriting for businesses, I guess the problem that you end up running into, like we were saying, is that AI can often seem really good at things that you don't know about. And the problem with being a professional in any capacity, especially in a freelance capacity, is that you're the expert being hired in. So the people hiring you as a copywriter probably don't know that much about about copywriting. So that then makes them predisposed to look at ChatGPT and go, oh, this is amazing. We can just use this and save loads of money. Is that something that you've bumped into?
Well, I have to presume that my workload has gone down because my former clients are thinking that way. And I think that's what's driving AI adoption. It's not, well, in some cases it's writers using it, but it's mostly the people who use writers looking at ChatGPT and, as you say, thinking this will do just as well. And it's because the output is so smooth and well-rounded when it comes out. So it looks, to all intents and purposes, it looks exactly the same as what you get from a copywriter, but there's just no process behind it. So, nobody's talked to you about your business. Nobody's talked to you about the product or service you're trying to sell, the benefits that it offers people, the problems that it solves, how people think about it, how people feel about it, which is really important. That's such a huge part of copywriting. Understanding what does the prospect feel about this? How are we helping them? How do we want them to feel about this product when they use it? You're just not getting any of that. Or if you are, you're probably getting it from your competitor's website or something like that, but you just don't know it. So yeah, that's the issue, is people looking at these outputs and thinking that will do as an output, but not thinking about the inputs. So, the research and the thinking and the process that went into it, and also not thinking about the outcomes that come after it. So yeah, okay, we've got a blog post, we've got a web page, we've got a slogan, whatever it is. We've obtained the output, but are we going to achieve the outcome that this writing's supposed to do for us? And that's all about the reader, which is what people never talk about the reader with ChatGPT. It's just all about writing. Creating outputs. But the point of writing is that somebody reads it, understands it, likes it, acts on it, whatever, could be copywriting, could be fiction writing, anything. The whole point is the outcome that you achieve, not just the output that you obtain. And that's what I never hear people talking about. That it's all about efficiency of producing outputs. How quickly can you write? Oh, it saved me this time. I get to do this quicker and that quicker. And all that about getting to an output. But I don't hear anybody saying, the marketing that I created with ChatGPT is better than a human copywriter. And I don't think anybody really believes that. They just think they could save their way to profit by making everything quicker and more efficient somehow. But there's no point in getting to the wrong place quicker.
No. I think you see that in where companies have embraced AI for, support chatbots and stuff. Because from companies' end, you can kind of see that, that probably looks like it makes financial sense on paper. But again, like the actual proof of whether it works or not is in the customer end and what their experience is. And you don't tend to see many case studies of customers going, oh, this is so much better. I love talking to a robot instead of talking to like an informed, skilled human who can help me. But yeah, it's all on the production end and not looking at the like what actually comes out the other end. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think I've been reading all sorts of stuff to do with the sort of vibe coding brigade as well. People who are very happily creating programs and websites and what have you, but then having to hire actual coders to come in and fix all the stuff that AI has done, because it's fine up until the point it breaks, and then you don't know what to do about it. And it's kind of the same with copywriting. Like it's fine as far as you look at the text and it kind of works until suddenly it doesn't. And then you no longer have any of the skills in-house, or you don't have the people to bring in to actually go and fix it, or it just ends up being even more expensive than it would have been if you just hired a skilled human in the first place.
Yeah, but I think people are in denial about that still. people still believe that, if AI is involved, it must be more efficient, even if you have to get a human in later on to fix the output. But I think what people are really looking for is accountability, because the AI will never be accountable. You can't blame AI or sue OpenAI or Anthropic or whoever for the output. So you just need to have a human in the loop, just to have someone to blame. So, copywriters and people who are, humanizing AI content, yeah, they may be making it a bit better, but they're mainly there to be on the hooks for all the for the errors in it. It's just a real fool's errand. It's just, let's just get somebody in so we can try and force this efficiency gain through, but also still have somebody on the hook for the problems.
Mm. Yeah. It's a slightly strange feedback loop going on. And, a lot of your thoughts ended up in this book.
They did indeed.
You published last year, I think, towards the tail end of last year.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I grabbed a copy of, and this is AI Can't Write, But You Can, and why human writing still matters in the age of ChatGPT, which when I saw you put that out, I was like, I'll read that. That sounds cathartic to have a read of.
And was it?
It was, yeah. It was nice. It was an interesting read because, it's part sort of explaining what and how ChatGPT and similar systems are. So very much aimed at people who maybe don't know what the hell's going on and what this stuff is and what it means. But then you kind of get into the more philosophical elements of like, what is the point of writing, and like why bother to do anything in the first place, in a way, which I really enjoyed, because I think something I've found, which is probably not what any of the AI companies intended, is that the emergence of these systems has sort of forced me to reevaluate actually what the point is, and like, what is the point of humans making stuff? Because at the moment, AI can't, in my opinion, match what humans make, and the improvement trajectory, which everyone, after the first year or two, everyone was like, oh my god, it's getting so much better all the time. 6 months, it's going to replace authors completely. All fiction will be AI. That's not happened, because it's still a bit rubbish. Like, there are some use cases where AI is quite good, but in terms of generative creative content, it doesn't seem to have really advanced beyond those early years. I'm not entirely convinced it will. But the thought experiment of, okay, this stuff exists, let's assume that it does get really good to the point where most readers cannot tell the difference. What does that actually mean to them, be a copywriter or be an author or an artist or a filmmaker or what have you? And those are all kind of questions that I've not really had to think about before, but then all of a sudden you're kind of like forced to confront that, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting about it getting better, because there was a kind of muted reaction to ChatGPT 5, wasn't there? Because that was supposed to be like a stepping stone on the way to AGI, and it clearly wasn't. It was just a little bit better again. When people pushed back against my book, they were saying things like, well, it's going to be so much better, this is the worst it's ever going to be, kind of thing. And I'm sure that it will develop in certain ways, but my I don't know how to describe the moral philosophical points about writing are, it's all about the process. It's about the thinking that goes into the writing. It's about following that process. It's about the person you become by doing the writing. Not just creating the writing, but what happens to you as well when you do it. And the thing about it, you say, if when it gets as good as a human, well, it will still not be a human. And I think as soon as people realize that what they're reading has not been created by a human, they will lose interest. Or I hope that will be the case anyway. I know that I do. I don't want to read something that's been written by a machine. I don't want to read, if someone sends me an email and they've just got ChatGPT to do it, then I feel like they're not very invested in the communication. They're trying to con me into putting engagement in when they're not putting any effort or engagement in themselves. And I think that will always be there, in the same way that with films, when CGI effects, obviously they are part of filmmaking now. But there's also a part of our brains that knows that they're not real. and we kind of change or ration our investment, our cognitive investment accordingly. So I think, yeah, it will get very good. Maybe people will be fooled, but whenever they find out that they're reading AI, I think they're always going to be a bit disappointed.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, certainly for me, like if I'm reading a book, part of my brain likes the idea that I could go and have a conversation or like have a cup of coffee with that writer.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's, a long dead writer, like the fact that you can go and find out about them is really interesting. Like that is part of it. Whether I ever actually will or not is neither here nor there really, but it feels, the point of it is you're having some kind of conversation and communication with another person. And you could maybe argue that you're having a conversation with an AI, but the problem there is that I'm not very interested in having a conversation with an AI, like regardless of how true that is. And yeah, it's a weird one. But I think the thing you brought up about CGI and movies is interesting because there's some interesting parallels there in that as a piece of tech, it was quite sort of reviled in its early days, like around the turn of the century kind of thing, where it was being way overused in a lot of movies, and every time a CG shot appeared or a CG creature, everyone was kind of like, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
Whereas in a lot of cases now, we've got to a point where you can't tell that CG is used, and it's used in really innovative ways, and there's an artistry that's growing up around it and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of, it's matured, I suppose, as a tool for filmmakers. But then I start to wrestle with, like, is AI going to go down that route as well eventually? And CGI is slightly different because there's always people at the very heart of it. You've got VFX artists doing their thing. But I do wonder whether we're stuck in this quite irritating bubble, both financially and in terms of how AI is being used. And once we get past that point, perhaps it'll be easier to see the use cases where AI-related tools are useful and valid and properly supporting artists and human creators and what have you, rather than at the moment when it quite often feels like the main interest is coming not from creatives but from managers and executives.
Definitely.
Using it as a way to short circuit and cut out whole swathes of people.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, the thing about CGI is, as you say, it's found its place as a tool. So it's been completely subjugated to the will of creators now. So you don't often feel like, this film only exists because of some CGI shots that were possible to do, and somebody thought, we'll turn that into a film. It's found its place in the creative process. But even so, it is creating things that would be difficult or impossible to create otherwise. I mean, depends what you call creation. I mean, you could just sort of do a painting, couldn't you, and film that for a Star Wars background from Attack of the Clones or something like that. They could have just painted that. So there's a question of, what do you consider achieving it? But in the case of writing, anybody can write. So, why are we turning to AI to do writing for us? What is it that we're trying to replace that or achieve that we can't do for ourselves? There isn't anything really. I mean, maybe I personally can't write dialogue very well or something like that, but I can go to an editor and they can help me sharpen up my dialogue, or they can write my dialogue for me. I can get someone else in to write it. What is the problem that's being solved by AI writing? What is the thing that we can't do that it's helping us do? And as you say, it's not coming from creatives. Nobody. I suppose somebody might have fantasized, like, if only something would, if there was only a machine that I could press a button on and it would just write this. But I don't think they wanted it to be written. They wanted to have written it themselves, right? What they wanted was a time machine. They wanted to just go to the end of their process, not have somebody come in and just give them something, because that's not writing, right? When people say, I wrote this with ChatGPT, or even I used ChatGPT to write this, that is not writing. What you did was not writing; it was something else. So CGI is a kind of painting, or a kind of model making, or a kind of creation of something. But when we use ChatGPT, it's not creation, I don't think. I'm sure, people might come on and say, well, it is creative, the prompt is creative. Um, your involvement in it makes it creative, something like that. I don't know, but to me, it's just not. It's not solving a problem that the creative has. It's just bringing automation to make money for the creators of the software. That's really what this is all about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the something that caught my attention a couple of weeks back was the head of Bloomsbury suggested that like generative AI could be useful for writers who are struggling with writer's block or who can't get started, and they can use ChatGPT to write the first paragraph or the first chapter of the book, and kind of see where the thought process comes from in that regard. But I think you run into the same problem in that you're not really fixing the problem or like figuring out how to get over the fear of the blank page or what have you. You're just kind of skirting around it and bypassing it. Whereas if you look at any other techniques for getting over writer's block, the idea is that hopefully one day you won't have to use them. But they're trying to kickstart your own imagination rather than sort of outsourcing it to a different writer.
Yeah. Well, 2 points there. Yeah. One is that, as you say, it's not helping you get better; it's actively making you worse, right? So not only you've supposedly solved the problem of your blank page, but you've made yourself worse at doing it. You had an opportunity to learn how to conquer the blank page with automatic writing or whatever it is that you could use to get over that problem. You didn't do that, and you missed an opportunity to do it, and you've undermined your own confidence that you will be able to do it. And the other point I'd make is that again, you weren't writing. You've not written the first paragraph of your book. You've just got a paragraph from somewhere else. And even if you say, oh, well, I recognize it as what I wanted to write, well, how can you be sure? And how can you be sure that it hasn't just fatally diverted you into some other creative direction that isn't yours? It isn't what you wanted, but this thing is there now. And it's really hard to reject and throw it away and say, well, now I don't want it. It's just too easy to accept it because it's there. And then that becomes the first paragraph of your book. And now maybe your book will be completely different because it's got a different first paragraph. It's just got there's a description in there, there's just a description of a character or something, and that just completely changes what your book is going to be about.
Prompted by the AI.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's the thing. Like if I, at the start of a fiction project, for example, if I wrote down a paragraph, like a prompt, I suppose, of what I thought my story was going to be, and then compared that to the story I ended up writing, like there would be some similarities, but they'd be quite different because along the way, it would, diverge into all sorts of unexpected directions, which I predicted ahead of time. It's just part of the process, but that is also what makes it interesting, and also what makes it like my thing rather than someone else's thing. Because anyone could take that paragraph synopsis and do their own version of it, but it's the process of doing it that gets you to something that is yours. So yeah, if you offload that and just think that the instant thing that AI makes off that prompt is yours, then yeah, I think you're kidding yourself.
Yeah. And as a reader, I want to feel that you've worked at that, that you've worked at your plot or you've worked at your characters or whatever it was. I don't want to feel that you just copped out and got an instant paragraph and then riffed off that. That's not satisfying to me. And even if the work isn't completely successful, even if I think, well, I didn't really understand that plot or, whatever it is, I think I would still rather read an imperfect human text than a perfect AI one. If AI gets to the point where it can fix, the issues that we find with, even quite high profile, like a Netflix series or something like that, you think, well, that wasn't so great, and I can see the problems myself. That I still want that, I still want something that people have put time into and I put time into, and maybe it isn't successful and isn't perfectly rewarding, but it's a thing that humans are involved in, and that's what I want. I don't just want to dial up AI content to suit my own whims. I need to be confronted by stuff that maybe isn't perfect, maybe isn't what I expected. It challenges me somehow, upsets me somehow, all these things are really important. And if we just get to AI stuff that's just weightless, it has no investment, there's no reward, there's no engagement in it, that's just not going to be art in the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, there'll probably be new things that emerge out of this. And there's all kinds of like fun, gimmicky uses. I can imagine, for example, like teenage kids on a Friday night getting together at someone's house. And if they could just, like, create their own little movie that is completely stupid and ridiculous, but actually the novelty of doing it with all your mates in the room could be quite amusing. But nobody else is going to want to watch that, because the whole point of it is that that's their little thing that they made. They're not going to pretend it's like an amazing movie and try and get it released or something. And I find it quite hard to kind of see beyond that kind of like gimmicky one-off novelty value thing.
I think it's going to be like that. It's going to be like a personalized gift or a build your own pizza kind of thing, where, okay, yeah, technically we can create something out of all these different bits. We can make some weird melange of bits and bobs, and it's kind of funny for a little while, but at the end it doesn't really engage us because it's just reflecting our I mean, if you find that funny, well, that's just something that you thought of something funny and then it was created for you, and you looked at your own joke and kind of found it funny. Well, that's not like going to a stand-up comedian who just comes out with some completely surreal gag that you've never thought of before, and that's just rocking your world. But it's not funny in the same way, and it's not going to be entertaining in the same way. It's not going to be. I mean, how can it be scary? Make me a. If say it can make films, and you say, well, make me a scary film where X, Y, and Z happen. Well, it's not going to be much of a jump scare if that's just what you dialed up. And I think that even if you haven't kind of dialed it up yourself, it will always be a little bit like that with AI art, because you just want to feel that it's got a human purpose behind it, human communicative purpose, that somebody wanted to say this thing or write this thing or tell this story, and they wanted you to hear it or read it or watch it or whatever it is. Is that purpose that AI just doesn't have. It's just responding to prompts, responding to commands. And yeah, I think it will always be like that. It will never. It's not going to suddenly start expressing itself. It's not going to suddenly graduate to to writing War and Peace or making Citizen Kane, because those are human things. It can't be a human, so it can't make human stuff. Sorry, I'm ranting a bit now. Need to calm down.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? I think the thing that always annoys me is that I've always been someone who's been really into tech and like loved all the gadgets and what have you since I was a kid. I've always built my own computers and pulled things apart and enjoyed like fiddling around in like an operating system, see how it works and that kind of stuff. This is like the first big tech thing where I've just been like, no, I'm not really into this. So I think that's part of my general annoyance with it. But yeah, let's move beyond the ranting, because like we could literally go on for like hours, I think.
No doubt.
Like, what is it you are working on at the moment? Like, where's both in the sort of professional end and then in your own writing? Like, what's going on at the moment?
Well, I have been doing some fiction writing. I'm not in a position to announce anything or really talk about it that much. But I have found it extremely hard. So I'm in the position where I might be tempted to use AI to help me out of a situation. But it's been good actually, because I've been a copywriter for quite a long time, and I've written some non-fiction books as well. I've grown very accustomed to the non-fiction way of writing, where people talk about storytelling and it might have a sort of narrative structure. But actually, you could just put things in pretty much any order in non-fiction. There are lots of different orders that you can choose. So actually, to have a plot that where events must happen one after the other, and they have interdependencies, and people say things to each other, and that affects other stuff going on. It's been a bit of a revelation, really. I've just got so much respect now for really anybody who writes fiction. Anybody who writes a screenplay, even the most cliched screenplay where you feel like everything, you can see everything coming. I've just got so much respect for anybody who does that now.
Yeah. I think when you try and make anything yourself, That's when you realize it's kind of a miracle that like any of this stuff exists, let alone it's actually good.
Yeah. Well, I'm in awe of people who get a process for it as well. I don't know if I'll ever attain that, but like novelists who can really crank it out, maybe to a genre or something like that. But even so, I'm still just really impressed with the speed that they can do it and the fact that they've got a repeatable process, because I just feel like I'm stumbling around in the dark trying to find a black cat that isn't there.
Yeah. That's yeah, I guess that's the there's some things you can only figure out by just doing a lot of it.
Yeah.
and gradually like tuning into to how you do it, and also then how you want to do it as well.
Mm. Yeah.
Cool. Well, if people like want to check you out, you have your own Substack, is that right?
Yeah, I've got a Substack called Introscriptive, which I don't update as often as I could, but I do sometimes. And apart from that, I'm mainly on LinkedIn. I used to be on Twitter, but not so much now. So those are the two main places to catch me.
Yeah. And is this available still? Can people grab copies of this if they want?
Yeah, that and my other books are all on Amazon, but only on Amazon, I'm afraid. So if you object to Amazon, which I understand, then you'll just have to buy it secondhand or from the library.
Yeah, my the one book I've published is only on Amazon, which I'm gonna try and figure that out soon and get it elsewhere as well. But
yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Tom. That was
Thank
really
you.
interesting. I think annoyingly, these are things we're going to be talking about for many years to come. But
I think so. Yeah.
But yeah, it's useful to, I think, to reevaluate this stuff periodically, both in terms of the tech side, but also I do kind of quite like the way it's forcing us all to think a bit more about what it means to be human creators and stuff we've taken for granted in the past, maybe.
Well, I think that's right. If this prompts people to really think about, what writing is and what it's for, and how it helps, how it helps with thinking and personal growth, if you like, I think if people start to appreciate that, then yeah, some good will come of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, I'll let you get back to your day, and thanks everyone for watching. And
Thanks everyone.
As well. But yeah, brilliant. I'm going to click the end button. So goodbye.
Bye.